The member for Guelph has given notice of dissatisfaction with the answer to a question given by the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Now, the member from Guelph has up to 5 minutes to debate the issue, and the Minister, in this case the parliamentary assistant, may respond for up to 5 minutes. I now turn it over to the member from Guelph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really appreciate the opportunity to further the conversation about the threats posed by the climate crisis we face. And I think it's so important to have this conversation because I'm deeply concerned that the government doesn't fully appreciate the cost or the urgency of the crisis that we face. While we were all enjoying Thanksgiving just a month ago, the IPCC released a report showing that if we don't act, that literally in our lifetime, in the next 12 years, we will be facing a climate catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. And one thing that is really important to understand about that report is that the scientists said that if we don't start reducing emissions by 2020, which is a little over a year from now, we will unleash what is going to happen in 2030. So some people think we can wait till 2030, but we can't. And we're already experiencing the cost, Mr. Speaker. The Insurance Bureau of Canada was just here yesterday at Queen's Park, and they indicated that in the first 9 months of this year alone, insurable losses due to extreme weather events cost us $1.2 billion. The Environment Commissioner of Ontario has shown that that is the equivalent of $350 per household in Ontario, and the costs are only going to go up. As a matter of fact, the Environment Commissioner indicated yesterday in her report that due to the inaction of the previous government, 1,327 incidents of raw sewage were dumped into our lakes and rivers. Total shame, absolutely. Part of what's causing that is that we've seen a loss of green space, in particular wetlands, from 25% to 7% in southern Ontario. So the low-cost solution to preventing these storm overflows affecting our lakes and rivers, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, is the water we drink, the water our kids swim in, fish in, go paddling in. Do we really want raw sewage in that? The least expensive way of addressing that is to prevent the problem in the first place. So the reason I asked the Premier whether he would commit today to protecting the Greenbelt is that the financially responsible approach to this issue is to stop paving over our green space and to begin to protect our water. Because that crisis is only going to get worse because of the climate crisis, so we have to act to prevent it, which is what led to the second part of my question, is that people clearly want action. 11,000 Ontarians commented on the EBR related to Bill 4, the cap-and-trade bill. In 24 hours, I received 3,000 emails from people saying to me, Mike, can you please tell the Premier we want climate action now? So I released a strategy this morning. I'm happy to have the government steal every idea in that strategy, but it was based on 5 principles. That we base our plan on science. Science that will allow us to fulfill our obligations to the Paris Accord, because I believe Ontarians are problem solvers, not problem deniers. That we establish targets, legislative binding targets, to bring Ontario to be carbon neutral by 2050, because that's what the scientists tell us we absolutely have to do, Mr. Speaker. The foundation of any plan has to require carbon pricing. And I know the government, and we've disagreed on that, and I tell you what, I agree with them that we should get rid of cap and trade and replace it with carbon fee and dividend, putting money back in people's pockets. But the foundation of any plan is carbon pricing. And I want to just quickly say that we need to address the myths that are out there. Carbon pricing works, and it's good for the economy. Let's look at Sweden, the very first country to bring in a carbon tax in 1991. They've lowered their emission by 23% and experienced 53% economic growth since then. The 5 provinces in Canada with carbon pricing are the 5 best performing economies. Unfortunately, Ontario isn't one of them anymore. So let's end that myth. And then the second 2 points is that any plan needs to be about creating jobs in the clean economy, and it needs to be based on efficiency, so we can help people save money by saving energy. So I'm simply asking the government to commit to targets to achieve our obligations under the Paris Accord. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. And now the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, the member from Barrie-Innisfil, may reply for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the passion that the leader of the Green Party has related to our environment. And I would say, instead of mansplaining climate change, I think we all understand climate change in this government. And let me assure you that this government agrees that man-made climate change is threatening our environment. We don't, however, agree that the carbon tax is the solution. A carbon tax does nothing but punish the hardworking people of Ontario. It's a tax that will charge you more to heat your home. It's a tax that will cost you more to feed your family. And it's a tax that will drive up the price to fill up your car. Ontario has been a leader in climate change. We will not tax the hardworking individuals of Ontario. Hear, hear. The closure of the first coal-fired generating plant was initiated by no other than the previous Progressive Conservative government, with the full coal closure supported by other governments since. So they had led by example. Exactly. This has led to the biggest single reduction of greenhouse gases, not just in Ontario, but in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Yep. The numbers, the scientific numbers, Mr. Speaker, speak for themselves. Since 2000, while Canada's total emissions declined by 1.5%, Ontario made a 20% reduction, Mr. Speaker. And since 2005, while Canada's emissions increased by 3%, in Ontario, it was reduced by 22%, Mr. Speaker. Which is why Ontario is on track to meet our Paris 2020 targets. The Minister of Environment, Conservation, Parks has been very clear. His plan will be a plan suited to the specific needs of our province and designed to ensure that we protect and conserve our land, air, and water. Hear, hear. It will address urban litter and waste. It will balance resilience to the impacts of climate change, such as extreme weather events. And do our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and ensure that polluters are held accountable and that we help communities become more resilient. The member mentioned the overflow of sewers into our waterways. I can assure you that this is a concern that we all share. This is a problem that was not properly addressed by the previous Liberal government, and we are prepared to ensure that we are making improvements. Hear, hear. The ministry is working with municipalities to ensure that municipal sewage works are able to meet today's standards and minimize the discharge of untreated or partly treated wastewater to Ontario waterways. And I have seen this firsthand, Mr. Speaker. I saw this firsthand in my local community of Barrie-Innisfil when we had worked to protect Lake Simcoe, and it's an issue near and dear to my heart. And in fact, Lake Simcoe, now we have quite the accomplishment. The spring phosphorus has decreased, and the oxygen that is available in the deep, cold parts of the lake compared to 30 years ago has much improved. And originally, we had an issue with the cold water fish that were unable to survive, but thanks to the participation, something that I had worked on and something many community members have championed, we were able to reduce the phosphorus levels, also increase our water sewage treatment plant in our local community, and make sure that we have clean water to live, play, and be around on. And so that's why we will continue to work with our municipal counters, our municipal partners, and municipalities continue to invest millions of dollars on plants and systems to upgrade and to minimize bypass and overflows. And we are encouraged by the partnerships that we have with municipalities and are looking forward to continue to work alongside in their efforts. And to address the member's other question related to the Greenbelt, Well, history lesson, Mr. Speaker. It was the progressive Conservatives that created the Oak Ranges Marine and the Niagara Escarpment, things we can all be proud of. And our idea was so grand, so great, Mr. Speaker, that the Liberals copied us by having the Greenbelt. So I assure the government and the government will assure you that our government is serious in our commitment to protecting as much as our environment and protected lands as possible. We've seen that by the Living Legacy funds, where we increase green spaces and protected areas and parks. Our record speaks for ourselves. And we welcome ideas. We welcome ideas to build our environmental plan. And that is why we launched consultations that is currently opened, and we urge everyone to provide their comments at ontario.ca/climate change. Mr. Speaker, we are...
Thank you. Thank you.